Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my channel? Thank you so much. At the class reunion, everyone was egging Lucas on to go kiss my wife. Blushing, he kissed her. She didn't resist. In fact, she deepened the kiss with intensity. The crowd erupted in cheers. No one knew that she and I had been married for 4 years. After the party, she offered to drive the intoxicated Lucas home, leaving me to walk the sparsely populated streets alone. She didn't come home that night. The next morning, strawberry red bite marks adorned her neck. Half a year ago, Sophia had started seeing another man, the very Lucas she once despised. From the beginning, I was the one who pursued her, adored her, and stayed by her side. We dated for almost a decade and were married for 4 years. She was always convinced I couldn't live without her, but now I realized it was finally time to let go. At the high school reunion, laughter and clinking glasses filled the air. Sophia sat beside me, not too close, not too far. She sipped drink after drink, her gaze heavy and tinged with sorrow. She looked toward Lucas, who sat diagonally across from us, his quiet demeanor highlighted by his rosy, tipsy smile. Beside him, Elena kept trying to engage him, passing him food and chatting. Both Sophia and I knew that Elena had once been infatuated with Lucas. As the rounds of drinks continued, people began to play truth or dare. Lucas lost, and everyone started chanting, "Lucas, go give Sophia a kiss." Encouraged and prodded by the group, he stood red-faced and hesitated, unsure whether to go through with it. But then one of the guys gave him a push, and he stumbled right in front of Sophia. She caught him just before he fell over, and the cheers grew louder. "Quiche, kiss," the crowd roared. Lucas leaned down, pressing his lips carefully to hers. The room fell silent, all eyes on them, waiting for her response. Everyone knew that Sophia wouldn't hesitate to push him away if she didn't like him, yet she didn't. Instead, just as he was pulling away, she placed a hand on the back of his head, fingers tangling in his hair, and pulled him closer, deepening the kiss. Her cheeks flushed, her eyes smoldered with a dark intensity. The crowd went wild, cheering and clapping. Everyone here knew that I'd spent my high school years pursuing Sophia, but none of them knew that we'd been married for 4 years. I suppose I couldn't blame them for rooting for Sophia and Lucas. Their story had always been more dramatic, more captivating than ours. I remembered asking her once in high school, "People say you and Lucas are perfect for each other. Do you like him?" She had scowled, her expression filled with disdain. "Anyone but him," she replied. "Don't even mention his name." Sophia hated Lucas because his father had been a third party in her parents' marriage, causing them to divorce. Later, Sophia's mom and Lucas's dad had remarried, creating a blended family that sparked mutual resentment. But as years passed, Lucas's resentment waned, though Sophia's hatred stayed strong. On her birthday one year, she'd rejected all his attempts at friendliness, even slapped away a small cake he had given her on his birthday. Her only gift was a note that read, "May the one you love be forever broken." It had been enough to bring tears to Lucas's eyes. I would never have guessed back then that perhaps she'd actually liked him. The noise from the crowd was overwhelming, blurring my thoughts. I wasn't even sure if this was reality or a dream. As the night grew late and the stars appeared, people finally began to leave. Lucas, visibly drunk, was gently pushed into Sophia's arms. "Sophia, could you take Lucas home?" someone asked. She guided him to her car, his drunken murmur unintelligible as he leaned heavily against her. She bundled him into the passenger seat, still oblivious to my presence, standing in the shadow of a streetlight. I called her name. Sophia paused, as if suddenly remembering I existed. Her features, sharp and elegant, reminded me of the girl I'd fallen in love with in our youth. She sighed, visibly irritated. "Just go home. He's drunk." She gave me a quick glance, her tone cold. "Don't get all sentimental. You weren't like this before." With that, she climbed in her car, driving away down the deserted road. I stood there, recalling all our years together, from our courtship to our marriage. It had always been me who took the initiative, who believed we were meant to be. She never thought I'd leave her. She assumed I'd never let go. I thought about how in the past 10 years she'd occupied half of my life, but now it was time to let her go. The place was remote, and it was late. I tried to hail a cab for a long time, but couldn't get one. In the end, I walked home alone, taking nearly an hour. The only thing I regretted was not driving my own car tonight. Halfway there, light snow began to fall, making it even colder. When I pushed open the door, the house was dark and silent. A chill settled over me as I entered, stomach aching faintly. I stumbled into the room, reaching to turn on the light, but nearly bumped into a picture hanging on the wall. I switched on the light, and the room brightened almost glaringly. Squinting, I looked at the picture on the wall. It was one I'd hung there, carefully framed and cleaned. The picture was of Sophia back in our first year of middle school. She'd been my desk mate. One day, I'd sketched her while she slept, capturing the delicate lashes that brushed against her cheek like the wings of a butterfly, softly illuminated by the morning light. I remember daring to touch her nose while she slept, only to accidentally leave a smudge of ink on her face. Just as I was panicking about how to wipe it off, she woke up. When she later discovered my masterpiece, she flicked my forehead, annoyed. Troublemaker. I clutched my forehead, feigning pain, but couldn't hide my triumphant grin. Just as I was lost in this memory, my phone buzzed. I checked it. It was a message from a friend. "Raphael, are you okay?" Scrolling up in our chat, I found several videos he'd sent a few days prior. Since I'd known Sophia, I'd always thought she was naturally reserved, rarely smiling in all the years we'd been together, including 4 years of marriage. She'd been calm and restrained even on our anniversary or during holidays. I believed that was simply her nature. But when I saw the videos my friend had sent, I realized she wasn't unfeeling or unromantic. She just reserved all that warmth and laughter for someone else. They strolled together, traveled together, and stayed in hotels together. Watching those videos, I barely recognized her. She would tenderly serve him food, gaze at him with a softness I'd never seen, and gently embrace him, burying her head in his chest. The last video was from half a year ago, the day Sophia formally began supporting Lucas financially. They were standing under the flowering tree outside our old school, the same spot where I'd once confessed my feelings to her. My friend, a teacher at the school, had stumbled upon them while leaving after a late night and secretly recorded the moment. Aside from him, none of our old classmates knew Sophia and I had married. We hadn't had a wedding banquet. She found it too troublesome, and I didn't mind the simplicity. My friend, who had known Lucas for years, hesitated for a long time before finally sending me the videos. At last, I remembered what had happened that day 6 months ago. Around that time, Sophia's mood had noticeably worsened. In hindsight, it was probably because she'd heard that Lucas was getting married after graduation. Lucas had struggled, weighed down by family burdens. Eventually, his parents had pressured him to marry a wealthy woman who liked him, though he didn't feel the same. On the wedding day, Lucas ran away to find Sophia. No wonder that day, when her phone rang, she left without even cutting my birthday cake. "Just eat the cake yourself," she'd said as she rushed out. I thought it was an urgent matter at work, but it had been Lucas. In the video, when she first met him, she'd been called, saying, "Aren't you supposed to get married that day?" Lucas, usually so composed, looked on the verge of breaking down, holding her hand with tearful eyes. "I didn't go. I don't want to get married," he told her. He poured his heart out, confessing that she was the only one he wanted to turn to. Sophia stayed silent at first. Then as Lucas turned to leave, she spoke up, "Wait." She moved forward, hugged him from behind, and kissed him. Then she offered $50,000 a month. "I'll support you." Lucas had tried to push her away, furious. "Sophia, don't go too far," but his hand ultimately fell, a look of humiliation on his face. He likely needed the money as someone in his family was unwell, and so Sophia started supporting him. But from what I could see, her feelings for him were far from those of a typical lover. The early videos my friend had sent me were all encounters he'd witnessed by chance. Lucas lived near the school, so my friend often saw them together. After watching the videos, I felt a churning in my stomach. I stumbled to the bathroom, where I ended up retching. A blurry memory surfaced from years ago. I had proposed to Sophia. I thought she would refuse, but she had accepted. Only recently did I connect the dots. 2 days before my proposal, word had spread that Lucas had a new girlfriend and was preparing to get engaged. Though half a year later, they broke up. I made my way back from the bathroom. Though I was exhausted, sleep eluded me. Sitting alone in the dark by the window, I gazed at the neon lights outside, listening to the ticking of the clock. Sophia hadn't come home all night. This wasn't the first time either. In the past, I'd just written it off as her being a workaholic and gone to bed early myself until the first light of dawn crept over the horizon and softly brightened the room. I heard the sound of the door opening. When Sophia came in and saw I wasn't asleep, she looked a bit surprised. I turned to look at her. She didn't say anything, her expression as calm as ever. If I hadn't seen her passionately embracing him, I'd have thought this was just how she always was. She glanced at me, then turned away, and that's when I noticed faint marks on her neck, strawberry-colored bite marks. I felt a strange, quiet ache, like a faint sting pulling at old stitches. I slowly stood up. Maybe it was the chill from the air outside, but my mood felt colder than ever. "Sophia," I called out. Her steps paused. I shifted my numb shoulder, a sigh escaping my lips. I barely recognized slipping into my voice. "Let's get a divorce." When the words left my mouth, Sophia didn't react. I couldn't tell if she'd heard me or not. She continued changing her clothes with the same unhurried calm. Only when she reached the door did she pause, as if she hadn't quite heard right. "What did you say?" She turned around, still tying her dress. I looked out the window, silent for a moment, then took off the wedding ring on my right hand and set on the table. "Did you hear me?" The diamond gleamed bright and dreamlike, like a dream, really. In all the years we'd been married, I'd hardly ever taken it off, but Sophia had never worn hers, nor had she cherished anything that mattered to me. As the ring hit the table with a sharp sound, I finally saw a faint flicker in Sophia's otherwise calm eyes, but it faded just as quickly. She finished tying her dress, frowning a little. "Don't be childish," she said. "I have a lot of work today. I'm going to the office." And with that, she opened the door and left. It was only then that the weariness washed over me. I turned and collapsed onto the bed. The blanket, untouched all night, felt cold and damp as I pulled it over myself, taking a while to warm up. "Sophia, oh Sophia," I smiled faintly and shook my head. Was it that I'd been stuck in place? Or that she'd forgotten to take a step forward? Had she forgotten that I was no longer young, that I no longer had the reckless courage or patience to keep pursuing her? I went out that day, and by evening, my friend messaged me. She and Lucas are sitting by the bench under the flowering tree outside the school. I drove over. When I got out of the car, I didn't go straight to them. I stood a short distance to their right, quietly watching the two of them. Lucas didn't seem to have changed much over the years. He still had that youthful, carefree energy, laughing and joking like he was still a teenager. They sat on the bench with rows of bare, winter-blooming trees behind them. Sophia looked somewhat agitated, checking her phone frequently, staring at it for a moment before putting it back. After a while, she finally pulled her phone out again, hesitated, and tapped on the screen. My phone vibrated. I took it out and saw a message from her on WeChat. "What are you doing?" I stared at those words for a long time, feeling an urge to laugh. It dawned on me this was the first time she'd ever texted me first. Every day before, it had always been me sending her things, little stories, sharing things I'd found interesting, only to get her lukewarm responses, usually a simple H. I'd gotten used to it, thinking it was just her way. But now, looking back, it felt almost laughable. Since she'd been with Lucas, she'd probably spoken more words to him in those videos my friends sent me than in all the years we'd been married. I didn't reply, slipping the phone back into my pocket before walking over to her. She looked up when she heard my footsteps. For a moment, I thought she might show some panic at me catching her in the act, but instead, her first instinct was to reach out and shield Lucas beside her. The surprise in her eyes faded quickly, as if she was confident I wouldn't react, or maybe because, after all those years of me chasing her, she thought I couldn't leave her. Lucas looked uneasy, glancing nervously at me. I ignored him and pulled a divorce agreement from my bag, holding it out to her. Here, take a look, and if everything looks fine, we'll sign it. Sophia took it, her usual calm expression giving way to cracks of disbelief as she registered the words on the page. I didn't wait for her to say anything. I just turned and headed back to my car. Look it over carefully and give me a call when you've decided. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw Sophia stand up, taking a few steps toward me, but after the turn, she was out of sight. When I got back, I lay on the sofa, staring blankly at the wall. After a while, my eyes grew tired, so I closed them. The moment I did, I remembered the day in our second year of high school when I confessed my feelings to her. My friends were all around, egging me on and making a scene. I was so nervous that I couldn't focus on anyone but her. My buddy even recorded the confession on his phone, grinning the whole time, and I heard only one word from her: okay. Not long ago, I stumbled across that old video again. Among the crowd, I noticed Lucas in the background. Before she gave me her answer, she looked up and glanced in his direction. When she said, okay, Lucas lowered his gaze and turned away. Looking back, it was just before I confessed to her that Lucas had started dating the class beauty from next door. Realizing this now, I let out a faint, bitter smile and tossed my phone aside. A strange heaviness pressed down on my chest, like it was stuffed with cotton. So all this time, I had only been his replacement, just a shield she used in her frustrations with him. Like a fool, I revolved around her only to find out it had been a one-man show all along. No wonder that even though we'd been together without breaking up, she was so distant that our classmates thought we'd split up ages ago. I took a deep breath, ready to push these tangled thoughts out of my head when my phone rang. At first, I didn't even realize it was mine because the ringtone I'd set just for her had never actually gone off before. I let it ring for a bit before opening my eyes and picking up. I didn't speak, waiting silently for her to say something. Sophia spoke. Why aren't you at home? I looked around at my current apartment, then at the time on my phone, 6:30 in the evening. She'd actually come home after all. I couldn't even remember the last time she'd come home this early. I lowered my gaze, tapping my now bare right hand on the table. Have you thought it through? If you're ready, let's sign it. Let me know when you have time, and we'll go to the civil office together. On the other end, Sophia took a deep breath and replied in a heavy tone. Are you throwing a tantrum because of Lucas? I paused, gripping the phone tightly as my tone turned cold. Shouldn't I be upset? Sophia, in all these years since I started pursuing her, I'd never spoken to her like this. I'd always spoken gently, never once raising my voice. She seemed stunned into silence on the other end. I lightly tapped the table and said, or do you think I should be happy watching you and Lucas together? That I should bless you both with my best wishes? Should I be thrilled or hold it all in? Because from beginning to end, it was always me making the effort for you. Just because I fell first, does that mean I have to keep my head down forever? Do you think I have no feelings? I walked over to the window, staring out at the night scene stretching beyond. You don't need to pretend anymore, acting like you're happy every day. Just sign the agreement and let's end things here. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Just as I was about to hang up, she spoke, a rare hint of tension in her voice. Who agreed to get a divorce? Where are you right now? Her last question struck a chord, and a strange mix of bitterness and amusement settled over me. Here she was, sounding almost worried for the first time, and only when we'd reached this point. I replied, the night's young. I think I'll go look for a bunny girl somewhere to have a little fun with. Then I shut off my phone and tossed it onto the bed. I lay down, looking up at the ceiling. This apartment was fairly new. It was where Sophia and I had first moved in together. I'd love this place. Opening the window gave a view of a wide stretch of scenery, but we hadn't been here long before Sophia said she didn't like it, so we moved into the current apartment. Now that I think about it, it wasn't that she didn't like this place. It was that the other apartment was closer to Lucas's. The next day, when I finally turned my phone back on, I saw she'd spent the whole night trying to reach me. There were dozens of missed calls from her and countless messages. If this had been before, I would have been thrilled at her concern, but even though she'd spent the entire night looking for me, she still couldn't figure out where I might be. If Sophia were the one missing, I'd be able to find her in no time. I knew all her favorite places and the friends I could contact where she might go. But Sophia, she must have realized last night that she had no way of finding me. She never cared enough to know anything about me, where I liked to go, who my friends were. Imagine that after knowing each other for more than a decade, and even after becoming her husband, her understanding of me was probably less than that of a co-worker she'd known for just half a year. She knew nothing, an empty shell. Eventually, I replied with a simple message. Let me know if you've signed it or want to go to the civil office. How distant we'd become as husband and wife. After getting ready, I headed to the office. By evening, Sophia finally found me. I figured that even to find my workplace, she probably had to go through her chat history. When Sophia arrived, I was about to leave for the day, but as soon as I saw her walk in, I suddenly had no urge to go. I lowered my head and kept typing, thinking that immersing myself in work was a good escape. Sophia walked directly toward me, her voice a little hoarse. Raphael, it had been so long since I'd heard her call my name like that for a moment, I felt like I was back in those youthful green days. A sharp pang hit my nose, but I kept typing, pretending not to hear her. My coworkers were all staring at Sophia, and a few of the newly graduated employees were discreetly taking pictures of the beauty on their phones. The colleague sitting next to me chuckled and asked, Raphael, is that your girlfriend? Sophia heard him, her expression stiffening slightly before she replied, I'm his wife. My quick-mouthed coworker exclaimed in shock. Whoa, so you're married? Sophia's face grew darker. She leaned closer to me and asked, Aren't you off work? I'll give you a ride home. The workday had indeed ended, and most of my colleagues had already left, except for a few who were working late to wrap up the day's tasks. My hands paused on the keyboard for a few seconds before I continued typing. I'm working overtime tonight, so I won't be back early. Those were her usual words from before. I thought that with Sophia's usual cool demeanor, she'd turn and leave. Surprisingly, she sat down beside me and said, I'll wait for you. Just like how I used to wait for her back then whenever she stayed late to clean the classroom or had other duties. I would always be there waiting. Staring at the screen, I said with a trace of sarcasm, What are you doing now? Our marriage had always been a burden to her, hadn't it? Being with me was nothing like the happiness she had with Lucas, so why was she holding on to it now? I didn't understand her, nor did I want to think about it anymore. I'd spent enough sleepless nights alone going over everything 1,000 times, feeling torn, exhausted, as insignificant as dust. But now, looking back, I realized that while I was tossing and turning, she might have been fast asleep in someone else's arms. Sophia didn't respond and simply sat quietly beside me for an hour before getting up to leave. I didn't even lift my eyelids. I knew she wouldn't have the patience for me. But then, not long after, she returned with a dinner box. Eat something. I glanced at it, noticing it was sweet and spicy. I passed the box to a colleague nearby, who happily accepted it. Sophia's face darkened even more. Raphael, stop this nonsense. My colleague glanced between us, confused. Raphael, don't you hate sweets and can't handle spicy food? Sophia froze at his words, looking bewildered. For a long moment, I answered slowly, yeah, I do. The one who liked sweet and spicy was her. Back then, I'd only pretended to like it for her sake. It felt like Sophia had become a version of my younger self, suddenly putting in effort, trying to reach out to me just as I had once chased after her. But now I was coming home later and staying in a separate place from her. Then one day, as I opened the door, I smelled something delicious from the kitchen. I froze. Walking inside, the dining table was set with several dishes still steaming, all neatly arranged and without anything spicy. Warm lighting softened her features, and for a moment, it looked like the cozy home I'd once dreamed of. Finally, she remembered this apartment, the place we used to live together. When Sophia saw me, she took off her apron. Come and eat. I gave the table a glance before heading to the living room. I ate outside. Sophia's hand paused over the rice bowl. I no longer had the energy to pay attention to her every action, analyzing her every thought like I used to. I cleaned up my room, took a book from the shelf, and read for a while. Sophia didn't make any other noise, and eventually, I forgot she was even there. When I finished showering and returned to the bedroom, I kicked off my shoes, climbed into bed, and closed my eyes, exhausted. That's when I suddenly noticed someone lying beside me. I opened my eyes, feeling a strange unfamiliarity. Sophia had never once gone to bed earlier than me. Maybe it was because I'd grown used to falling asleep with an empty bed beside me. But when she wrapped her arms around me from behind, I felt like I'd turned to stone. Her warm breath tickled my ear as she spoke softly, her voice like a smooth, potent liquor tempting me. "Can we talk about Lucas?" It was like a bucket of ice water, snapping me back to reality. Even now, at this very moment, she still couldn't let him go. Talk about what? At her fingers off me, there's nothing left to discuss. I started acting like the old Sophia, coming home very late or choosing to stay over at a friend's house, not wanting to see her at all. She began coming home early more frequently, just like I used to do when I was pursuing her, paying more and more attention to every little thing I did. But I wasn't in a hurry. She dragged her feet about signing the divorce papers, always finding some reason not to. I was even willing to see how she'd try to win me over, watching her bring surprises and warmth, full of hope each time, only to leave disappointed time and time again. I finally understood. So this was what it was like when I'd pursued her back then. Sophia was even colder than I had been, and I'd faced countless rejections in those days. I started wondering how I'd managed to stick with it for so long, humbling myself to the point of being nothing but dust. Perhaps, I thought, as I swirled the wine glass in my hand, smiling to myself, anything that comes too easily is destined to be taken for granted. "Hey, Raphael, check it out. She's looking at you, isn't she?" A buddy nudged me at the bar. Through the neon lights, I noticed a delicate figure. The girl turned her face, fair and serene, a little shy but otherworldly. Just one look, and I was captivated. She resembled Sophia so much from back then. Lost in thought, I didn't notice as the girl made her way through the crowd toward me. She finally stopped in front of me, shy, holding out her phone to ask for my contact information. My friend smirked knowingly and nudged me. Told you this wasn't the first time it had happened. For some reason, I'd always seemed to attract this type of girl. Before I could respond, my wrist was yanked back from behind. A tense voice almost gritted out my name. "Raphael." I turned. Sophia was standing there, arms full of vibrant red roses, their scent filling the air. She grasped my hand where a cold, glinting diamond ring once rested, one that was now gone. She glared at the girl, then turned her frosty gaze on me. I raised my brow. "What do you want?" "What do I want?" She came closer, visibly restraining her anger. "Today's our wedding anniversary." I looked surprised. "Since when have you ever cared about that?" I chuckled. Not once had she been present for an anniversary. There was always work or some other reason she wasn't around. Sophia stiffened, then silently shoved the roses into my hands. "Let's go home." "Home?" I looked down at the roses, fresh with water droplets, and tossed them into the trash. Sophia was too late to stop me. She turned and looked at me, her expression unreadable. My friend leaned over and said, "Hey, Raphael's allergic to pollen. Didn't you know?" I pulled my hand from hers, avoiding her gaze, which had darkened with shock and sadness. I didn't nag her to sign the divorce papers every day, nor did I make a big deal of it. But after 6 months of chasing me, Sophia finally gave up agreeing to sign. I knew it would come to this. Watching someone's feelings for you die, seeing them crushed little by little, even over small things, eventually breaks a person. The more I looked at her, the more I saw myself from back then. In my youth, I'd had patience, unyielding spirit, and boundless energy to pursue her. Now, I doubted I could even last 6 months. The day we signed the divorce papers, we were at home. I was much calmer than I'd expected, like all the storms had passed and only an icy stillness remained. Sophia had drunk quite a lot, and I could smell the strong scent of alcohol on her. I knew she'd never liked drinking. As I walked into the room, I noticed the frames on the wall. There were 2 of them. One was a portrait I'd drawn of Sophia, and the other was our high school graduation photo, the one Sophia had hung up. I'd always thought she'd kept that photo up because I was standing in the row right in front of her. But when I took a closer look, I realized that the person she was looking at back then was Lucas. Their story, without me in between, might have been one of those perfect mutual romances. I turned away, looking at my own drawing of her beside it. I reached to take it down, but as I touched it, the frame fell, crashing to the ground. I flinched, thinking to catch it, but my hand withdrew. Then a hand reached out from behind, trying to grab it, but the frame slipped through Sophia's fingers, shattering on the floor. Glass shards flew, one of them cutting across her finger, staining the ground with blood. Sophia didn't seem to feel it and bent down, trying to gather the broken frame and torn picture. "Why didn't you catch it?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Didn't you draw it of me?" So she'd known all along. I thought she hadn't noticed that picture had hung there for years, yet she'd never said a word. Tiny glass shards were slicing her fingers, coloring the floor red. I took her hand. "Leave it. Broken things are just broken," I said. "Even if you piece them back together, they'll never be the same as they were." Did I feel sorry for her, seeing her wounded? No. I felt sorry for my old self. If only I'd known to keep something back in love, maybe the word love itself wouldn't feel so exhausting now. The pieces of glass settled, and she looked up, her eyes meeting mine. It was the first time I'd seen that look in her eyes, shattered like the glass on the floor, beyond repair. She slowly reached out her hand, tried to touch my face. "Please don't go through with this divorce, okay? Let's try again. Let's start over." I moved out of her reach, turned to the table, signed the divorce papers, and shook my head. After finalizing the divorce with Sophia, I suddenly felt a wave of relief. As we left the Civil Affairs Bureau, I walked east and she walked west. I didn't look back. It wasn't until I sat in the car that I noticed she was still standing nearby, staring at me blankly, like a child lost and unsure of where to go. I looked away, pressed down on the gas, and drove off. For once, it wasn't me watching her back as she disappeared. I knew Sophia would end up with Lucas. Even during the 10th month of our divorce, she never said she'd let him go. Their announcement didn't surprise me, but their breakup came so quickly that it did. It happened less than a week after our divorce was finalized. What was supposed to be the beginning of a new, open relationship lasted only briefly. A friend sent me a screenshot of Lucas's social media. He posted, "So you just like the thrill of the forbidden? If only you'd told me sooner." Sophia's disinterest came fast enough to shock everyone. After that, I stopped following any news about her, though updates would still occasionally come through mutual friends. I heard she had the photo I'd broken repaired and now kept it on her desk, sometimes staring at it absent-mindedly. She still wore the wedding ring I'd pawned away. One day, during a heavy snowfall, I pulled back the curtains in my high-rise window and looked down at the nearly empty street. There she was in a gray coat, standing alone under a street lamp. It reminded me of that one time back in school when I'd waited for her in a snowstorm, hoping to surprise her on her birthday. I closed the curtain, pretending not to see her. I grew accustomed to life without Sophia. My home, once quiet and empty, I decorated to be cozy and tidy. I could cook the food I liked without wondering about her preferences. I sprawled across the bed, no longer waking up in the middle of the night to the emptiness beside me. The next summer, I packed my bags and traveled to places I'd always wanted to see, sometimes with friends, sometimes alone. I saw clear blue seas, vast deserts, eagles soaring high, and sunrises and sunsets from mountaintops. I held handfuls of snow in front of icy peaks. These were the places I'd once asked Sophia to see with me, but she'd always been too busy. Somehow, though, she'd found the time to be with someone else. My close friends now say that Sophia has changed. One colleague of hers even told me, "I really think she regrets it now. She's still wearing her ring and hasn't been close to anyone else. Maybe you should consider getting back together." I received that message while watching the sunrise from a mountaintop. I looked down and typed back, "No, not everything is worth forgiving, and not every beautiful view needs to be seen by two."